Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. My name is Brian Donnelly. The Spirits Educator is a digital education platform and trade resource for the distilled spirits industry. My aim is to provide in-depth spirits information, brand transparency, and category education for distributor sales teams, service industry and hospitality members, and motivated enthusiasts. I currently work for a major wine and spirits distributor, but my work here on the Spirits Educator is completely unaffiliated with my current employer. Today I'm going to be talking about Wyoming whiskey. I always find bourbon brands that come from states other than Kentucky and Tennessee super interesting, and this one comes from, no surprise, the state of Wyoming. I'm going to be referencing a script that I wrote so I can communicate all this information correctly. If you would like to read my full write-up on this brand, I'll include a link below in the description. If you would like to be notified anytime I have new content on my website or this YouTube channel, please consider subscribing to my newsletter. I'll include a link below in the description. First, I'm going to give a little background on the brand. Wyoming whiskey was the first legal distillery in the state, located in the Bighorn Basin in Kirby, Wyoming. In 2006, fourth-generation farmers, as well as lawyers, Brad and Kate Mead, wanted to diversify their business ventures by making Wyoming's first premium whiskey using only regional ingredients. The Mead family first came to Wyoming in 1890. For more than a century, the family's ranch in Spring Gulch in Kirby have thrived, taking their place as permanent staples in the Wyoming community and landscape. They were joined by friend and fellow lawyer David DeFonso, who they met through their firm. Since the group had no whiskey-making experience, they brought in Steve Nally, a 33-year veteran of Maker's Mark. He was the keystone of Wyoming whiskey's early development, creating the recipe for their first product and the processes to craft it. Steve's background at Maker's Mark probably explains why the brand uses a wheated mash bill. Edrington, an international spirits company and the parent company for Macallan and Highland Park single malt whiskey, recently purchased a majority share of the brand. Wyoming whiskey, just like most of the products in the Edrington portfolio, represent a sense of place. Wyoming whiskey is distilled grain to glass in Kirby, Wyoming. The whiskey is never sourced, and the distillery does not do any contract distillation for other brands. The brand uses a wheated bourbon mash bill of 68% corn, 20% wheat, and 12% malted barley. The distillery sources non-GMO corn, wheat, barley, and rye locally from Wyoming farmers. It is important for the owners to know who grows their grains. Their partners, Brent and Sherry Regreth, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, in Byron, Wyoming, have worked with Wyoming whiskey from the start to select specific strains of non-GMO corn, winter wheat, barley, and winter rye for specific starch and sugar yields because those are the building blocks of whiskey making. Brent cultivates a corn strain that matures in 90 days, which is ideal for Wyoming's high elevation and short growing season. Here's an example of the grain quantity it takes to produce one batch of bourbon. There is 2,166 gallons of liquid in one cooking mash, 1,100 gallons of water, 450 gallons of backset. I'll clarify what backset is later. And there will be 57 bushels of grain, including 3,183 pounds of corn, 951 pounds of wheat, and 570 pounds of malted barley. All right, just to clarify, sour mash, sometimes referred to as backset, takes some of the residue from the first distillation run and places it back in the fermentation tank to use for the next round of fermentation. The backset is very acidic and essential in fermentation. The sour mash process assists in creating a consistent product from one batch to another. Water is an extremely important and often forgotten ingredient in the production of all distilled spirits. Your whiskey is only as good as your water. Wyoming whiskey has access to a glacier-fed source of water that is unrivaled. A mile below Manderson, Wyoming, lies the Madison Formation, a limestone aquifer where they source their water. This limestone rock is millions of years old, and the water that it filters hasn't seen the light of day since the Bronze Age, over 6,000 years ago. A bourbon brand's recipe is the mash bill plus their yeast strain. Without yeast, there would be no fermentation, and each distillery's unique yeast strain is a special building block to achieve their desired flavor profile. Wyoming whiskey uses a combination of two yeasts, a high-yield yeast, and a second proprietary yeast that yields a bit less but produces a slightly fruitier alcohol. Their whiskey is double distilled on-site in small batches using a custom-made column still from Vendome Copper and Brass that is 18 inches wide and 38 feet tall. All Wyoming Whiskey's products are aged for a minimum of 5 years in one of 6 rack houses in the unique terroir of Kirby, with its natural hot and cold temperature swings, ranging from 135 degrees Fahrenheit at the height of summer to negative 30 degrees Fahrenheit in the depths of winter. The aging temperatures can dramatically fluctuate from day to night. These temperature swings and heat intensity cause barrels to breathe in and out, taking the best flavors and colors from the oak. The dramatic temperature fluctuations are tough on people, but good for the whiskey. The brand maintains an old-school mentality, believing that nothing can replicate the magic that comes from the simple combination of time, temperature, and charred oak. The brand's flagship product is called Small Batch. Every brand defines their version of small batch whiskey production differently. Wyoming Whiskey bottles around 48 to 53 barrels for their batch size. They pull from a pyramid of barrels in the rack house to achieve a consistent flavor profile. Since they do not rotate their barrels, this is the best way to mingle together their batch. Sometimes it takes a few extra barrels to achieve the desired flavor profile. Edrington, the brand's parent company, specializes in sherry cask finished whiskey, especially with their most popular brand, Macallan's Single Malt Scotch Whiskey. I believe they even own their own sherry bodega in Spain now. The double cask labeled is cask finished for 6 to 13 weeks in Pedro Ximénez sherry casks. They reuse the barrels several times, so the exact length of time varies slightly. Each batch is tested to ensure it hits the correct amount of secondary maturation. Their bourbon is aged on-site at the distillery for a minimum of 5 years in the dramatic temperature swings that can range from 135 degrees Fahrenheit at the height of summer to negative 30 degrees Fahrenheit in the depths of winter, which cause the barrels to breathe in and out, taking the best flavors and colors from the oak. This product is bottled in small batches, around 50 barrels at 88 proof or 44% ABV. All right, I'm going to talk about each label individually. Wyoming Whiskey Small Batch Whiskey. Small Batch is a wheated bourbon distilled grain to glass at Wyoming's first legal distillery. It's the brand's flagship and defining product. All Wyoming whiskey is distilled at the distillery in Kirby, located in the Bighorn Basin, from a mash bill of 68% corn, 20% wheat, and 12% malted barley. All grains are sourced locally from the state of Wyoming, and all water is sourced from a glacier-fed limestone aquifer. Their bourbon is aged on-site at the distillery for a minimum of 5 years in the dramatic temperature swings that can range from 135 degrees Fahrenheit at the height of summer to negative 30 degrees Fahrenheit in the depths of winter, which cause the barrels to breathe in and out, taking the best flavors and colors from the oak. This product is bottled in small batches, around 50 barrels at 88 proof or 44% ABV. All right, this is the newer packaging for Wyoming whiskey. Here's what the label looks like. You can see 5-year age statement up here. Here's the back label, 5-year age statement, batch size, description. If you ever see a Wyoming whiskey bottle with the more rounded shoulders and it's a little shorter, that's the older packaging, and this is the newer packaging. And the second label is Wyoming Whiskey Double Cask Straight Bourbon Whiskey, finished in sherry casks. Double Cask starts out as the same 5-year-old wheated bourbon that is used for the small batch label. Edrington, the brand's parent company, specializes in sherry cask finished whiskeys, especially with their most popular brand, Macallan's Single Malt Scotch Whiskey. The base bourbon is cask finished, or a secondary maturation, for 6 to 13 weeks in Pedro Ximénez sherry casks. They reuse the barrels several times, so the exact length of time varies slightly. Each batch is tested to ensure it hits the correct amount of secondary maturation. This product is bottled at 100 proof or 50% ABV. And then here is the double cast. Here's the label. Here's the back. I just want to note the brand makes several other different labels. There's a rye, there's a single barrel, there's a cask strength option, I even believe. I'm just going to focus on the 2 core expressions because those should be available every single day in every major market. Thank you so much for watching. If you would like to support this channel further, please consider becoming a Patreon member or gift me a cocktail through the link below in the description. And as always, please drink responsibly.